This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Would you take your mental health therapy from TikTok? That's what hundreds of thousands of people are doing, at least in a way, through Ashley Wanamaker's account. She's a registered counselor. She never thought she'd be a TikTok therapist, but that's exactly what's happened. We talked to her about the evolving face of mental health therapy in this edition of The Best of Real Talk. I want to introduce you to our next guest in just a moment, but perhaps she might just do a better job introducing herself. This is Ashley Wanamaker, as taken from her TikTok.
Hi, I'm a professional trend forecaster, and these are my predictions for 2023. This year, it's not for you. It's, in fact, for them. Not sure how to do this trend? Easy. You could just think of anyone who isn't you and do that. It's 2023. Let's bring back the empathy. Have you been doing inner child work? Well, tuck that BB into bed because it's inner angsty teenage time. Let's rage. Up next, did you spend 2022 living more unapologetically? Well, buckle up, baby, because apologizing's back. It's time to listen. We're going to validate. We're going to take responsibility when we've hurt others. This trend is especially gorgeous for those of us with a fair complexion. Let that accountability shine. And of course, we're going to continue to what? To feel those feelings. Emotional regulation is a classic. But this year, we're going to add a little twist. We're going to know that it's important to feel our feelings, and we're also going to know that feelings aren't facts. Which leads me to nuance. Black and white thinking, forget it. Nuance is in. We're really looking forward to seeing how this trend shows up within the confines of social media in particular. So, do it.
Absolutely love it. Ashley Wanamaker is a registered psychologist. She's an accidental TikTok therapist and founder of the Being Human Club, a feminist mental health center in beautiful Calgary, Alberta. Ashley specializes in working with trauma, anxiety, depression, grief, eating disorders, and body image concerns, and she's always been a great friend of the show. It's nice to see you again, and I don't think it's too late in the month to wish you a Happy New Year, is it?
No, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, I loved your performance as the professional trend forecaster. I thought you really nailed that one.
I like how you chose the only TikTok where I overtly misrepresent myself. Yeah, as a trend forecaster.
Yeah,
I'm not a psychologist.
Yeah, but I always thought we always think when we're going to use a video to introduce somebody, what will give us the greatest jumping off talking point, and so there it is. You say you no longer living unapologetically. Now is the time to start apologizing. We just had a moment on the show about 15 minutes ago where a legendary broadcaster, Charles Adler, looks into the camera on a take that he had on the show last week and just basically said, yeah, I didn't have all the facts. I was wrong.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Music to my ears.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
We need to be doing more of that.
Hey, are you the type of person, I know that you're a professional counselor and obviously a registered psychologist, but can we get into your personal life and maybe how you operate when the calendar flips to a new year? Do you make resolutions? Do you use that as a point to evaluate how you've been doing and how you want to be doing and how to get there in between?
Yes and no. I think I love a fresh start and a new year. I stay away from resolutions in their traditional form because I think they don't work most of the time. But I think it's important to constantly be reflecting on, how's it going? Do I want things to be different? Do I like how things are going? What's important to me? So I think I do that all the time. I think I do that in my work and my personal life, but I do think the new year is a beautiful, set reminder to go how did that go?
Yeah.
And what would I like to go differently?
Yeah. And what would I like to look like or feel like or be doing or who would I like to be with or whatever the case may be a year from now? I think goal setting is important, but sometimes we can get discouraged, right? We set goals, but is it fair to say that as human beings, we very rarely achieve them? Maybe that's too much of painting with one brush.
I mean, I think that's the cliche, right? Is that we're a couple weeks, like you said, into January and people are starting to fall off their resolutions. So I think how we define goals are really important. I think that what we tend to do as humans is we're a dramatic group of beings, right? Like we like all or nothing. So we go from not having gone for a walk for a year to being like, I'm running that marathon now. And then we get really upset when we don't do that. So I think examining why we're setting some of the intentions or the goals that we are setting is really important. And I think it's one of the biggest things that gets overlooked often.
So when you talk to your, what do you say, patients? Patients?
I say
guess?
clients. Patients feels weird to me.
It does. Yeah. Okay. So when you're talking
power imbalance.
Yeah. Fair. Yeah. Not more contemplative answers. This is a good theme of kicking off our week here on Real Talk. But when you're talking to people about how to set like meaningful and achievable goals, is there a boilerplate process to follow, or is it so individualized that it'd be tough to say?
I think generally, before we even start talking about how to achieve a goal, I'm always really curious about why you'd like to achieve a goal. So, unsurprisingly, the trope of New Year's resolutions often centers around like fitness and weight and food. And so when I get people coming into my office and they say, I want to lose weight, the first question is always like, okay, why? What does that mean to you? Where does that come from? Because we have all of these factors that influence how we see ourselves and where we'd like to go. And so sometimes we have beliefs that we've just, internalized that maybe don't actually resonate with our values or who we are, but that we think we should be doing. And that can be a reason people don't achieve goals. Often we want to get to the meaning of the why because it helps us set out like a more successful path forward to know what is the emotion we're trying to feel, what's the meaning we're trying to achieve, rather than focusing just on the surface of the behavior or the like final objective.
It was back on January 4th. We welcomed a couple of Athabasca University professors to the show, Kristen Roger and Heather McLean, and they were talking about Taylor Swift's video in particular, the one that sort of garnered a lot of attention, described as fat phobic. And it was an interesting conversation. It was one that challenged my understanding of fat phobia and maybe some of the focuses that we want to have, or conversations, bigger ones as a society that we want to have. And then just this past Friday in our Trash Talk feature, we had a letter from a guy, from Johnny K, a real talker who sort of took aim at that feature interview and shared his own thoughts on that. Sort of unapologetically fit was the tone of his email. And I hope I'm not unfairly summarizing that. But you specifically reached out to me and said that this was something that you wanted to talk about. And you're an expert on this. So what's our angle of approach here?
Oh, I have lots of thoughts and feelings about Johnny's message. And I think that, the conversation earlier in the week was centered around a Taylor Swift video. So probably fair that, what the purpose of fat activism wasn't discussed thoroughly. But I thought there were so many parts of that were so interesting when we reflect on, and actually good examples of more covert anti-fat bias. So I want to start by saying, even fat phobia, I want us to be curious about that term, because what we're really talking about isn't, a true phobia like we would diagnose. It's not a mental health issue we're talking about. What we're talking about is prejudice and discrimination towards a group of people. So fat phobia in and of itself is a bit misleading. We can talk about anti-fatness or anti-fat bias. And the other, I guess, thing off the top of my head that I really wanted to say that I thought was very interesting in this letter in particular was fat activists aren't trying to make you fat. Fat activists are making sure that fat people have human rights. So that's like a really important thing that I think was missed in that letter that I wanted to highlight. Because you can hear Johnny getting threatened, perhaps is the right word, to say like, well, I work out and I want to work out. And I could be wrong, but in that interview, I didn't hear anybody saying everyone should stop working out.
This is a fair point.
That was an interesting response.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. And I appreciate you taking it on. When you talk about, I mean, you do a lot of work with people, right? I'm working with like eating disorders and body image concerns. And I really appreciate you saying, if someone says, well, I want to lose weight, asking why. because you'd probably get a million different answers, right? I mean, some of it might be like, I don't know, I want to feel healthier, I want to be whatever. But then for a lot of other people, it's probably like a lot of external factors, right? Like, how do you recognize as an individual? What do you say to somebody? And it doesn't necessarily have to be weight related. It could be related to any change that somebody wants to make in their life. How do you understand if that's a change that you're making for, to quote The Bachelor, the right reasons?
Right. Well, I think with all of these goals, we're often not taught to sit and go, like, what do I think? So we have all these beliefs floating around, like, I'm supposed to do this job, or I'm supposed to get married, or I'm supposed to do all these things. And we often, and I think until many of us go to therapy, we don't stop to go like, oh, what do I think about that? Is that something that actually I feel? And so, trying to gather the information to go sort of, where does this come from? And when we are talking about, the answer you just gave, even if someone says, oh, I want to be healthier, it's like, what does that mean? Because that's probably one of the most common things I hear. And we often, as a society, when we're talking about anti-fat bias, we conflate health and being thin.
Sure.
And actually, those are different things. And actually, health has been co-opted into this idea of like physical health, right? Like when we reference health and wellness, what we're really talking about is, what we put in our bodies and how we move. And that's certainly, in the pie chart of health, that's a slice, but that's not what health means. We're missing emotional health, mental health, social health, sexual health, occupational health, financial health. There's all these other parts of us that get pushed aside and that are just as important as physical health and intersecting with physical health. So even that question of like, I want to be healthier, it's like, okay, what does that mean? What does that mean? We go down and down and down to go like, what are we saying? What are we talking about?
Well, there's probably there are grossly unhealthy ways to get thin.
Sure.
To state the very obvious, I think the pursuit of thinness is probably for some people, probably one of the worst things they could do. But again, I don't venture, I shouldn't be wading into a conversation on this. I'm not an expert, but just like the way that real people talk, I think you're right. There certainly is that understanding of, but I've seen like more conversations, I think open-minded conversations among the general public, including on shows like this, about breaking some of those notions that people have held. Do you see it? Like, do you see public attitudes changing from your perspective?
Sure. Slowly, really slowly. I think we have a lot of work left to do. That letter that we were talking about that was on Trash Talk, which I can't say without hearing your voice of like, I'm not going to do your Trash Talk voice, but in my head every time
I would love to hear it. I would love to hear it. Johnny could sample it. We could have like a guest. We could have like a guest voiceover that you could do once a month or something.
No, I will not take you up on that.
Okay,
but yeah, like, so thinking about that letter and thinking about how Johnny in the letter was like, yeah, let's not body shame. Like, I'm not going to start screaming at people in the street that they're fat, or I'm going to like defend them if that's happening, which is great news. That's wonderful. And also, that's not the only way that these attitudes negatively affect people. So if we think about even, if we take the word fat out and we insert like race, great, overt racism of like, being objectively discriminatory towards Black people. Most people would agree at this point in time, I hope, that that's unacceptable and people would stand up and say something. But we also know that there's all these microaggressions that occur. And we also know that there's all these systemic issues that occur. And so, thinking about how, for example, in healthcare, the use of the BMI, which is truly nonsense and has been proven to be not only nonsense, but rooted in racism. So it's not only like a bad predictor of health incomes, it's what most medical practitioners, most physicians are taught in med school, and it's still perpetuated. And so if we look at the kind of care that someone who is fat gets versus someone who is in a thin body gets, like that's a big issue. That's a big concern in terms of harm and in terms of health outcomes. So we have to sort of look at, do I think that things are changing? Yes. Do we have loads of work still to do? Yes. And you can hear a microaggression actually in that letter when Johnny's saying like, you know, people want to be fat, they can be fat, but like I go to the gym every day and it's because of my health history. And it's like, that's awesome. We do know, like, move your body. We should all be moving our bodies. But the assumption that, you know, Johnny isn't fat because he goes to the gym once a day is quite naive, actually, because what we do know is that, you know, between 30 to 80% of our weight is determined by genetics. And there's actually lots of research that shows, you know, exercise as a form of weight loss doesn't work, similar to dieting. So does that mean we shouldn't move our bodies? No, we should totally move our bodies for different reasons. But the assumption that, you know, Johnny is not fat because he is engaging in, you know, exercise consistently and shows this self-discipline is wrong and is inherently judgmental of saying, you know, and fat people aren't doing that. There's fat people that do Ironmans. There's fat people that run marathons. There's fat people who have infinitely less health problems than I do. And I'm, you know, in a straight size body. So I think the harm is in those assumptions. And I think we do need to dig down a bit deeper as a society and start really like acknowledging those things so we can change them.
Oh, we're talking about a trash talk that ran on, it was Friday the 6th of January, if my memory is correct. And then I don't know if you heard Ashley just this last Friday's on Friday the 13th, but there was a follow-up to it from a real talker who talked about her own personal experience and trying to lose weight, including the gastric sleeve surgery and basically her upbringing. She said that, you know, in her mind, the most unhealthy that she's ever been was at 24 years of age when she was 100 pounds. And it was a really powerful email, and it's never lost on me. And I always try to really say it clearly, like spell it out how much it means to us. When people, I think it takes a great amount of courage to write in, to use your name and to say, this is my experience. And I'm so grateful for that. We talked about your TikTok following, and you sort of, you present yourself as an accidental TikTok therapist, which I love. Your bio on TikTok, you're at Ashley Wanamaker, the TikTok psychologist you need, not the one you want. Tell us what that means.
Well, first of all, I guess I made a TikTok early in the pandemic, truly for my friends. And was like, this is fine. No one will ever find it. As long as no clients see it. That's a fun thing I did. And then I had some videos go viral, which was so wildly uncomfortable to me. So I feel
like millions of views.
Yeah. So that was really uncomfortable because I'm really comfortable being, you know, an expert, and the nature of the work I do isn't about me. It's about, you know, the people I work with. And so I'm really comfortable doing that. I'm less comfortable talking about myself. So when things did go viral, I was like, oh God, what have I done? But then tried to leverage that into doing something useful. So what feels useful to me is using that platform to provide mental health information to people who might not otherwise have access. And so the reason that my bio says what it says is that a few of the first videos that went viral was me saying sort of these like unpleasant truths that people don't often want to hear, but that are really important. I think a lot of people think that psychologists are just like super nice, understanding people. And certainly being an empathetic, safe human is really important. But a lot of my job is actually telling people things they don't want to hear. I think that's also my responsibility. And so I think that's what people tended to like more, is when I was like, I'm going to hurt your feelings a little bit for good, hopefully. Yeah. So sort of just, that's what my bio explains, is me saying things people might not want to hear, but might be important for them to hear.
I know that no mental health professional, including yourself, is ever going to suggest that like, you know, reels on Instagram or you know, posts on TikTok will replace therapy. And obviously there's an immense amount of value in therapy. And I hate to say it, but for people who can afford it, or people who have access to it, or people who have coverage for it. But I do think it's super cool that for all of the ills and frustrations and kind of the nastiness and gnarliness of social media, that it also provides opportunities to do exactly what you're saying. For somebody to follow you on Instagram, or in particular TikTok, and every day or every few days get a little blast of wisdom or insight or direction. It's really cool. And if you think, I mean, again, I know I'm sounding like I'm 95 years old here, but That wasn't even a thing 5 years ago, let alone 10 years ago. And to me, I've been making a real concerted effort lately to start following people on my personal accounts that edify me, that encourage me, that educate me. And I'm really grateful for it, including yours.
Oh, thanks, Ryan. Yeah, it's happening so much more. And I think when COVID happened, it was an interesting time, particularly for like therapists online, because previous to COVID, we're really taught in our training to not exist online, which seems sort of outrageous now, but it was like, don't be online, don't let clients see anything about you. We were kind of taught to be these one-dimensional like therapists who are only professional, which is problematic for lots of reasons. But then COVID happened and everyone, for lack of a better word, was freaking out. And so I think a lot of therapists felt a duty or a responsibility to help offer some coping strategies for people who might not otherwise have had them. And so now it's sort of the Wild West, which I think you're right. I think having, democratizing mental health information is really important. And with that comes a whole bunch of people who might not be held to the same ethical standards appearing online, offering mental health information that is wrong. Like if you notice on my TikTok, it's unethical for me to offer therapy to people who are not my clients. Even my clients, if they send me, communications on social media, it's like, that is not therapy. That's explicit. I'm not to be diagnosing anybody. So there are also accounts that drive me nuts a little bit because it's offering all this information that then people who might not otherwise have gone through the proper, training or aren't being held to a standard to protect people are misusing. And so that's sort of the dark side of that I caution people away from.
That's such a great point. And I'm thinking of some specific names, but I don't think you nor I are looking to pick fights right now. Unless you are, I mean, we can go throw down and let's go. How much of your counseling was like, are you, by the way, you're sitting in an actual office, right? That's not a fake background behind you.
It's my real office.
Look at it's like beautiful. Is that the Being Human Club? Is that?
Yes.
That's what we're seeing there. So you sit with people, like I'm noticing hand sanitizer on the table and stuff. I'm assuming that this is actually where some of your sessions happen. This is where you sit with people. Before COVID, were you 100% in person? During COVID, did you maintain operations at full capacity via Zoom or whatever? And then where are you now with regards to that balance? Like how, and that must present challenges, by the way, to not be in person with someone.
Yeah. The start of the pandemic was a wild time. So the start of the pandemic, I would say almost all of my sessions were in person, which I really loved. And then so I went from spending like 9 or 10 hours a day with humans in a room to staring at a screen. And I was at a point in my career where I had just stopped taking new clients on because my practice was probably a little too full. And I was like, okay, here is good. But a lot of the clients I was seeing at the time, were doing really well, so I wouldn't see them as often. And then when the pandemic hit, suddenly like everyone was in crisis, and we were all in the same crisis, which is a weird thing. You're not usually in, the trauma that you're treating with people,
right?
So I went from being with people all day to staring at a screen, like in my condo, this tiny little spare room, and I felt so tired, and that was shocking to me. We now have research to back up that for psychologists, for therapists, for counselors, doing this kind of online work can feel more draining. I wasn't allowed to go back to my old office for about 3 months. I had to operate from my home. And so those were wild times. I was working like ridiculous hours at that point. And then as the pandemic has ebbed and flowed with case counts, having people come back in, making sure everyone's being safe. I feel very fortunate. I'm immunocompromised. So I feel so fortunate that my clients have been so respectful of that. So I have to weigh my personal risk too. But, at Being Human Club, we really pride ourselves on having really kept things safe. We still mask in all the common areas. We have HEPA filters in every single office. We're socially distanced enough. So, really fortunate for the community we've created here, and for all of our clients have been so respectful of that. People tend to take their mask off once they come into the office, and they don't come. We ask that they don't come, obviously, if they have any symptoms. So Yeah, so now now it's interesting. Now I would say probably like a 60-40 split, depending. We're located in downtown, so a lot of people who used to just like, walk on over on their lunch break, people weren't coming downtown as often. Things are changing a bit more now. But some people I think will probably be virtual forever because of convenience or because of safety.
Yeah.
And I have total respect for that. I kind of love the balance now of having some in person and some virtual. It feels much better than it did at the start, for sure.
Yeah. Is counseling changing? Like does the I don't know, what is it? Is it an art or a science? It's both. It's an art and a science. Do you see it? Like, have there been impacts on the actual practice of it that you notice? I mean, how many years have you been doing this? Has it changed demonstrably from when you started to where it is now?
That's a big question. I don't know if I can answer that. I know that I've been in private practice for 6 years. I've worked in mental health for, good Lord, probably like over 10 years for sure. The way I practice continues to change and evolve. One thing that I do notice is that as a trauma therapist, this is all like very intense work. But I think the thing that helped buffer that in person before the pandemic happened was so much of what my job is to attune to like what people's bodies are doing. Only like 10% of communication are the words that we speak. So, looking at what's not being said, noticing these little like expression changes, or noticing when people's body language goes like this, it becomes really difficult to, assess that from just like the shoulders up. So it's beautiful to have that. It's possible to do without. I think having good rapport with clients and knowing, really who they are, you have to, I think, have that to be able to catch those things virtually. But I think certainly the way I practice when I started even 6 years ago versus now, we have more tools certainly to facilitate online. One of the therapies, the interventions that I do is called EMDR, which involves eye movements.
I've heard about this.
Oh, it's a wild ride. It's so weird. I always preface it by being like, this is going to be weird.
Can you tell us a bit about it?
Yeah, I'd love to. So eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy, which, full disclosure, I thought was total nonsense when I started. And I was a total jerk about it. I was like, okay, because essentially what we're saying is we go back to traumatic moments, and then we process those by doing these eye movements, which basically your eyes go back and forth like this. It's not hypnosis. A lot of people ask if it's hypnosis, and it's not. But in the simplest way I can explain it is, if we imagine sort of like two sides of the brain, which is not really how the brain works, but for the sake of explanation here, we can talk about in traumatic moments how there's the story of what happened, so the events that happened, and then we have the emotions of what happened. And often in traumatic moments, we go into this like fight, flight, freeze response. And when we're in that response, we don't have access to all of the emotions. So in fight, flight, or freeze, we have access to like irritation, anger, numbing out, but we can't access all the other things. So when we go back with EMDR, we go back to what happened, and then, oh, great, that's a beautiful visualization. And then it's sort of like fast forward processing the emotion. And it's a wild time because people will be like angry and then crying and then laughing and then calm. And like, there's all kinds of wild things that happen in the body. And I was so skeptical until I went to the training begrudgingly. And I was like, this is a bunch of nonsense. It's now the gold standard treatment for trauma and a whole host of other things. Yeah. And we have to actually do the EMDR when we go to the training. And so it wasn't until like I had EMDR done to me and I was like quite smug. I was like, I know what this thing's about. I know exactly what it is, da, 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 da. And then I did it. And of course it was like totally something different. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
And I kind of hate that it works so well because it feels hokey, but there's tons of research behind it. But I feel unethical not doing it because it works so fast. People are processing things so quickly. People who have had like unprocessed trauma for decades. I've used this a lot with like ex-military people, with people who had, developmental childhood trauma, just like truly like horrifying experiences that have dictated how their life has gone, and then had it clear in like a matter of months.
Wow.
And they get their lives back. So I do it all the time. But I do warn people that like, it's unlike a lot of other therapies and it feels kind of strange. It's a wild ride.
Huh. Nick's watching now live on YouTube. He says that EMDR is working for his 2-year-old.
Yeah.
Like toddlers can receive the therapy?
Yeah. And the cool thing about, I don't work with children that young, but there are EMDR therapists who do. And there's different modalities because, someone who's 2 might not be able to follow. Like we use a light bar. I have a machine over here. I can move it over and show you later. But like we use a light bar, we use hand buzzies, but there's different ways to do what's called bilateral stimulation, which is essentially stimulating either side of the brain to help process. So for children, there's different ways to do it that looks a lot different than in adults. But the beautiful thing about kids is that, a 2-year-old doesn't have like this cemented sort of trauma that's dictating how they operate through the world for decades. So it often processes much quicker in children than it would in adults. So I'm happy to hear it. That's so great.
Wow. I'm trying to decide if I want to put you in this position. You're going to hate me.
That's okay.
Dr. Jordan Peterson's name has come up in the live chat. Sorry, what do you want me to do? And I have a registered psychologist right here live on the show. I'm curious for your take. Get into this as much as you like, or not at all.
Sure.
But Dr. Peterson, as you know, the College of Psychologists of Ontario has essentially told him that he needs to sort of take some social media retraining, or he risks losing his license. And he's clapping back and making a big deal of it, as you would expect he would. And his legion of ardent followers, his disciples, are targeting the college. But the college has essentially said, like, sorry, like, this we said what we meant what we said, and this is the deal. Your thoughts on the entire scenario and Dr. Jordan Peterson and whether or not he's fit to have a professional license? I mean, I think that people can have different personal opinions and convictions, and I don't think that all psychologists in Ontario or across Canada are on the same page about everything. Have you been paying attention to the story, and what do you make of it?
Oh, yes and no. It's so funny. My partner yesterday was like, you should talk about Jordan Peterson. And I was like, I'm not giving that man any more attention.
Your partner said you should talk about him on this show?
Yeah. He was like, you should like bring that up because that came up last week.
Okay,
and I was
good.
Great. But I was like, that man, it hurts my soul. I mean, here's what I'll say. I deliberately don't follow Jordan Peterson for many reasons. But in the context of what's going on with the college right now, that I know about, which really is a very surface understanding of what's going on with him, because I, again, try not to pay attention to him. So I think the criticism is from a lot of his followers that like, and probably from him, is that the college is like censoring him and this is like freedom of speech, blah, blah, blah. What people don't understand is that the college actually exists to protect the public. So that's something unique to the College of Psychologists in each province, is that they're actually not there to protect us as psychologists, which is what like the College of Physicians does, right? Like they tend to look out for like the physicians. College of Psychologists is there to protect the public. Because we are in positions of power, that there has to be accountability, that there are ethical codes, that we need to be held to a standard to be sure that we're not hurting people. And that includes how we speak publicly. So like Jordan Peterson is entitled to have whatever thoughts and feelings that he has. And just as I am, he needs to be held accountable to what he's saying publicly. Because there are like ethical considerations here that, for example, as I mentioned earlier, like I'm not walking around like diagnosing people because that's unethical and potentially harmful. I have to be really mindful, even though I use humor often, even though, I talk about a wide range of things, even though I have opinions that maybe not every psychologist agrees to, I only am allowed to say those things publicly if they are like founded on research and there's evidence. I'm a professional. People's well-being and lives are put in our hands. So I have to really consider, like, how is what I'm saying potentially going to negatively impact people who might be vulnerable to this information? And that's something Jordan Peterson doesn't do. So it's so much less about freedom of speech. It's more about, like, he perpetuates incorrect and harmful personal opinions that he does not, like, dictate our personal opinions. We have a responsibility. If I'm going to say something personal that's not rooted in science, I have to be really clear about, like, this is a personal opinion, this is a professional opinion. And I have to be open that it's standard practice that if someone is causing harm, that they first receive training before they potentially lose their license and lose the privileges. This job comes with incredible privilege and incredible power, and it needs to be used responsibly. So I'm glad the college is doing that. I think that as Peterson does, he's doing quite a masterful job of twisting what's actually happening to victimize himself, to say, I'm being censored, I'm being whatever. And it's like, no, you're being held accountable for what your job entails. And if you don't want to be held accountable to the college, then give up your license and come up with a different title for yourself. But Jordan Peterson is not somebody who is speaking ethically or behaving ethically online. And there should be accountability for that.
Yeah, I'm just...
Am I making everyone furious?
No, are you kidding? No, I don't. I mean, well, you're probably making Peterson disciples furious, but I'm just I'm scrolling through his Twitter profile to find something that I saw over the weekend that I just shook my head at, and it looks like he might have actually deleted it. But it's really interesting to see him now. Here he's tweeting about socialist globalists, and he's talking about defunding the CBC, and he was taking a run at some prominent Canadian journalists who happen to be women. I don't think that's. I mean, happen to be. I say that facetiously. It's just he's a very unique case when it comes to psychologists and how they typically behave or present themselves publicly, but he's also got, Ashley, as you know, millions of followers. I mean, I was making the argument, and it's not a strong argument, I acknowledge. It's actually kind of a stupid position to take on the show last week, because I was like, who even cares if he gets stripped of his professional credentials? He's a millionaire so many times over. He's got this Patreon where people were giving him hundreds of thousands of dollars. He's got all these best-selling books. He does his speaking tours. He doesn't need. He can just be Jordan Peterson, or he can. Someone will. I'm sure that some mail in, put the stamp on the paper. University somewhere will give him an honorary doctorate so he can keep being Dr. Jordan Peterson. But I don't think he needs his professional designation to maintain this audience that he has. And I did get some angry emails from big Peterson supporters that were talking about how who would care? Are you kidding me? Who cares about the professional designation? Are you even listening to yourself? I acknowledge I was a little bit glib about it, but I do think it's safe to say that there's no other. I mean, if you want to call him. Now, you're going to puke in your mouth a little bit when I say this, but if you, I don't know if you want to call him a mental health professional, but that's what a psychologist is. And he is a psychologist, so I guess he's a mental health professional. But he sure is on an island with regards to his public conduct, the things that he said. Johnny, who does a great job producing this show, is just showing us some images of his comments about Elliot Page.
He's a quack,
the Canadian actor. He's a quack. But he's a quack with an audience of millions.
Do your job. Don't tell people hey, you can beat depression by making your bed and cleaning your room. He just 12 rules for life. It's so simple, and he's a quack.
Well, Ashley, okay, so that's Johnny's opinion. Ashley, is there? And now I know you're gonna remind us that you just told us that you don't pay much attention to him on purpose. So maybe this question's unfair. But aside from maybe sort of you can get a sense of what a guy like that is all about by how his public comments, public commentary about him, and the reputation that he forges. But have you seen examples of just straight up bad advice? Can you think of one off the top of your head where you go, this is one example of why I got no time for this guy?
I mean, I think the sexism and the transphobia, I just think, I can't even think of one thing with him. But what I will say is he's an excellent example of there's different kinds of people that tend to be drawn to this profession in particular. So there's people like myself who, I feel really strongly about mental health, and I really want to. I think people are fascinating, and I love working with people. I think that's an honor to get to work with people and hear their stories. So it's very little about me, and as I think a good clinician, we have to constantly be asking ourselves if I'm going to share something that is about myself, who is this for? The answer always needs to be if it's in a session or if it's publicly speaking, it has to be for other people. Our goal is to also, part of our ethical code is to also educate the public. So that's one kind of person. I think Jordan Peterson is an excellent example of someone who has big narcissistic traits, who probably sought out this profession because he wants to be treated like some kind of guru, right? Because if I think about where his comments tend to come from, he actually does the opposite of what I just described, which is I think he actively causes harm to people. When he says things, he likes to embolden people who might, for several unrelated reasons, feel disenfranchised, feel alone, which I think is why he's so successful. He's managed to monopolize, a subset of like young men who are feeling lost and, isolated and disenfranchised in different ways, which is fair. But then the way that he deals with that is by attacking other, arguably more marginalized groups of people. And it's a lot of like hate and it's a lot of criticism. And I think it's harmful. So he's publicly saying things like that are transphobic, that are sexist, that are wrong and hurtful. So he's someone who's very dangerous. And he's not the only one. There's tons of people in this profession who simply want to be like the expert because they want to feel important. They want it to be about them. They want to feel worshipped by like their followers. But we shouldn't be conflating that with what actual therapy is and what actual mental health care looks like. That's like some weird guru nonsense that's rampant and I think on the rise. That's not therapy. That's not care. That's not healthcare.
You can follow Ashley Wanamaker on TikTok and on Instagram at Ashley Wanamaker, and you can find her online at ashleywanamaker.com. You can learn more about what she does, her collective, along with her colleagues at beinghumanclub.com. It's so good to... we kept you longer, and I'm looking at the clock, and I'm realizing you probably have a session starting in 6 minutes, so we're going to let you go. But Happy New Year. Thanks for doing this, and we'll look forward to the next time our paths cross.
My pleasure. Thanks so much, Ryan.
You got it. That's registered psychologist Ashley Wanamaker. Loved that conversation with Ashley. We'll be sure to get her back on the show in the weeks and months to come. In just a second, filmmaker Trevor Anderson and photographer Fish Griwkowsky on their new film, Before I Change My Mind. Commentary, artistic interpretation of representation of non-binary people in society and sport. But first, a message from the sponsors making this possible. Are you a professional engineer or a recent graduate from an engineering school anywhere in Canada? Apex Automation wants to talk to you. That's right, they're hiring in a number of rewarding career opportunities. We're talking engineering, fabrication, automation. This team is leading the charge, putting their people and their clients ahead of their profits. You want proof on why this company's culture is different than all the rest? Check them out today at apexautomation.ca. Tens of thousands of Canadians are trusting their post-secondary learning experience to Athabasca University. Why? Because Canada's Open University offers world-class accredited online programs and courses that give you the flexibility to learn at your own pace on a schedule that suits your lifestyle. Plus, it's one of Canada's most reputable research universities. You can learn more about the undergraduate, graduate programs, and other reasons to check out athabascau.ca. California Closets is providing custom closets and storage solutions for the entire home. Make the most of your space with their custom organizational systems. Sure, it may be a dream closet in your bedroom, or maybe it's a craft closet downstairs for the kids. How about something to house your entertainment system in a way that increases the quality of the experience and the value of your home? Plus, they do garages. Oh, do they do garages? You can get a free consultation today at californiaclosets.ca. Are you dealing with flood damage, fire damage? Maybe you or your construction crew found mold or asbestos in those walls you're looking to renovate. Oh man, this type of nightmare needs to be trusted to the talented team at Complete Care Restoration. They're the ones we trusted with our studio build. They're the ones you should trust for whatever you need done. Construction, renovation, or recovery. It's Complete Care Restoration. Online at CompleteCareRestoration.ca. No matter what you're celebrating, guaranteed there's a perfect fit for a custom DQ cake. That's right, any occasion is a happy occasion with a DQ cake. We recommend that Real Talkers check out the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. You'll find happiness however you want it. That world-famous soft serve with a fudgy, crunchy, chocolatey middle. The perfect way to celebrate any occasion is a DQ cake from the Dairy Queens in Palisades, Nemeo, Newcastle, Westmount, and Baseline Road. For more than 20 years, Eden Landscaping has been bringing outdoor spaces to life. Still family-owned, still based out of Edmonton, Alberta, this team has perfected the art of modern to traditional and then every other type of landscape design. Their projects all have one thing in common, that's happy clients. What's the difference in dealing with Eden Landscaping? Find out today with a free consultation. You can learn more and book it at landscapeedmonton.ca. The first of the month means 15% off grocery purchases of $75 or more at all Friesen Brothers locations. 16 of them across the province of Alberta, where Albertans have trusted this family-owned grocer to put quality, affordable, nutritious meals on those family dinner tables. Established in 1955, still family-owned. It's Friesen Brothers, online at friesen.com. Are you noticing health issues with your pets? Maybe obvious joint pain? Maybe there's something with their coat that just doesn't look the same as it used to? It could be what they're eating. May we recommend you check out Grand Dog Essentials Quality Raw Food. We're proud to feed Grand Dog Essentials Quality Raw Food to our dogs, and we've seen the health benefits. The best part about it, it's affordable. The business is family-owned. They care deeply about what they do. And the food's delivered right to our door. If you're in Edmonton, Calgary, or Central Alberta, check them out online. The promo code REALTALK takes 10% off your first order at granddog.ca. Are you an apprentice or journey person electrician? Kubi Renewable Energy would love to hear from you. That's right, it is heading into their hottest season, the busiest time of year, and they're looking for installers looking to put up solar power projects across BC, Alberta, and into Saskatchewan. Kubi Energy is one of Canada's busiest solar installers and the only installer that's Tesla certified. You can check out the work that they're doing online at kubienergy.ca. Make the next move in your career today. If you're making decisions for a small business, a large business, or an entire community when it comes to residential or commercial, even industrial garbage and recycling management, maybe you're taking a look at a big home renovation or a huge landscaping project and you could use one of those front load or roll off bins. Are you putting together a community event or a festival this summer where you'll need fencing, portable toilets, or even water hauling? Keep it local with Local Environmental Services. You'll find them online at localenvironmental.ca. Today we celebrate the arts, the creative arts, collaboration. Today we're going to talk about the art of storytelling with a celebrated director and his writing partner. And we're thrilled in just a moment to welcome Trevor Anderson and Fish Griwkowsky to the Real Talk studio. It's a special day for them. This is the eve of opening night at the Rainbow Visions Film Festival at Edmonton's famed Metro Cinema at the Garneau, where Before I Change My Mind will kick off that annual celebration of LGBTQ2S+ film across Canada and around the world. Before I introduce you to the pair that made this film happen, let's take a look at a scene from Before I Change My Mind.
Hey, Marnold.
My name's Tony.
Did he just say his name was Marnold?
Marnold? What kind of name is Marnold? Tony.
Whatever you say, Marnold. You're the expert.
Okay, Robin, right? Let's find you an instrument.
Back home, I used to be a clarinet player for a year.
And you can be whatever you want to be in life. Here, we only have saxophones.
That film directed by Trevor Anderson, co-written by Fish Griwkowsky, who join us live in the Real Talk studio. It's so nice to have you here. Good morning to you.
Hi, Ryan.
Nice digs.
Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, it's amazing.
I'm a little bit pissed off at you, Fish, as a matter of fact.
Why is that?
Well, because I just thought I'd
We're just
start
gonna
hot.
fight. You said
I
this
thought
was
I'd
gonna
start
be nice.
hot. We didn't properly. I didn't sort of read through your CVs and properly introduce you. I should go through, Trevor, your work and all of the accolades that you've earned in your incredible career in film, and we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that. And Fish, of course, the arts and culture critic for the Edmonton Journal, right? For Post Media, and a man about town. And you've done a ton of stuff with photography. You've got your Canon DSLR right here on the table with us. This is what you do everywhere you go. I see you with this camera. But I saw you jumping, and correct me if I'm wrong. We'll talk about the film, I promise. But on social media, on Twitter the other day, someone was taking shots at Edmonton's downtown, and we've talked about the woes of downtown.
Right.
And crime is up, and perception is not positive, and advocacy groups are doing everything they can to attract people to live and work downtown. And you named all of the crown jewels of Edmonton's downtown. You talked about the CBC. You talked about CKUA.
Right.
But nary a mention of the Real Talk studio in the historic Mercer Warehouse.
I knew exactly where this was going. Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, downtown's complicated, but I just wanted to, as you do all the time, just add some, details to the argument.
I liked it. Layers to the onion.
Yeah.
Well,
No, I'm sorry about that. And it's because I hadn't been in here yet. And now that would be number one.
Now it would be number one. That's all I was endeavoring to do. Okay, thanks to the both of you. Go see before I change. No.
See you later.
You are. I mean, this is certainly your home province.
Yeah.
And do you consider Edmonton your hometown, Trevor?
I was thinking about this yesterday. If it's like sourdough, Red Deer started me and Edmonton baked me.
Yes. I like that. We'll this feels like a great time for a Friesen Brothers mention. They have a sourdough thing going on right now,
yeah?
but we'll save it.
Straight to the sponsors.
We'll save it. So Red Deer was the starter. I'm jumping all over here because I have so many questions. I love the film, and people will be able to check it out. Obviously, tomorrow night's a big one, opening night, expecting a sold-out house. But there are scenes from Red Deer there? There's that water tower.
There's the water tower, the big green bulbous water tower.
Yes. Is that the one in the film?
I called it E.T.
Yeah.
That one is that had to be in the film. That was sort of one of the first images that was non-negotiable. We had to have that water tower.
Kind of an homage to your upbringing, and I can't wait to pick your brain on this. I've seen some interviews you've done talking about the film as somewhat biographical. For folks that aren't familiar with it, this is the story. It's a coming-of-age drama about a person named Robin.
Yep. 1987, small town Alberta. The lawyers don't want me to say Red Deer.
Why is that?
Well, no, that's the funny soundbite to say. But the truth is that it's not Red Deer anymore because St. Albert Place is in it. I love landmarks in my films, and so we had so many beautiful landmarks from all over Alberta that it's not factual to say it's Red Deer anymore. Now it's this small town Alberta of the mind.
Yeah.
So
there's that wavy brick wall outside.
Yeah, the Douglas Cardinal wavy wall.
Yes.
I love it. And the Kalmar Pharmacy for your listeners in Kalmar.
Yeah.
So we built a part of the set outside of Beaumont. So it's really all over. But the back to what it is. 1987, new kid arrives at junior high school. Nobody can tell if new kid is a boy or a girl. You think that's where the movie's going to go, but then the movie never discloses a gender for the hero. And it becomes more about this kid making increasingly dangerous choices to fit in.
Co-written, you and your collaborative and creative partner, Fish Griwkowsky.
Sponsored by Garfield.
I was going to know you've got the. You're a guy. You're a man of vintage finds and restored treasures.
Yeah, for real.
And the Garfield button is something special. I want to ask you how you got involved with the project, but I'm just noticing right at this moment that both of you are wearing matching swatches.
Right.
Yeah.
What's the story? Not fabric swatches, the actual watches.
Well, the movie's set in the 80s, and we already loved Swatch, but this just really drilled home our love of Swatch. On the day that we wrapped shooting, one of the producers, Allison Richards, and Fish and I went to West Edmonton Mall and bought matching swatches. And then the film got its world premiere at the Locarno Film Festival in Switzerland. Oh, do you want me to?
Yeah, there you go. Show the folks watching on YouTube.
And Locarno is in Switzerland, and swatches are from Switzerland. And all of a sudden, we learned about this swatch sponsorship the Locarno Film Festival has, and every year Swatch makes a collectible Locarno Film Festival swatch.
And it turned out to be a cat, right? So I got really excited about that. So the very first thing we did when we landed in Switzerland is we checked in and then just ran right to the swatch booth, right?
Yes.
Where they were being sold. And because we were a little late, we weren't there on opening day or anything like that. Ran right there, looked, there were 3 left. We grabbed them. And then this guy behind us got really mad.
Yeah, we made an enemy straight off the plane. We made an enemy at the Locarno Film Festival.
Yeah, well, you guys are kind
and
of
that man was
kind of
Lars
a big deal,
von
right?
Trier.
And we never worked in film again. Locarno was big. We'll circle back on this, but the star of your film is it? Does Vaughn pronounce their name Murray?
Yeah, Vaughn Murray.
Vaughn Murray taking Best Actor honors at the Locarno Film Festival, which is incredible. I want to talk about the casting of that for a second, but how do you become involved in this? If I'm reading or remembering or assessing the timeline correctly, what a boost back at the 2020 Sundance Film Festival where this screenplay is named to the GLAAD list, which is a curated list of the 10 most promising LGBTQ2S plus screenplays. So you were already involved, Fish, before 2020. How did you come into the mix?
Trevor and I have known each other since maybe the mid-90s at U of A, hanging out at Rebar and terrible dance floors and this kind of thing. And so over the years, like as he moved from theater into film, I just kind of was along for the ride. Like, so for the first, I mean, you did a movie, but there was a point where you asked me to shoot the High Level Bridge.
Yes.
I don't know if anyone remembers that.
Of course.
Basically, it was kind of, you can explain how it worked, but basically we had this sort of cheap high-res camera, and Trevor's just like, here, take pictures of the High Level, or take video of the High Level Bridge, and I just did that over the whole winter. And then our editor, Justin Lachance, threw that together. That went to...
Sundance, world premiere at Sundance.
Yeah,
not world premiere.
No.
It played at Sundance.
Yeah. So it went to AFI in Hollywood, and then when we were there, Greta Gerwig, like we weren't even going to go to this award show. Why don't you pick this up here?
Well, we didn't think we qualified for any of the awards at the awards brunch, so we thought, okay, well, let's just go to the ocean. We're in Los Angeles.
Yes.
We're Canadians in LA. We're supposed to go to the water. But then, okay, well, we should go support the other filmmakers at the festival and just poke our heads in. So we poke our heads in, and Greta Gerwig is like, and the honorable mention goes to, and so it was like, oh, hello, Greta Gerwig, shaking hands and taking this. It was a nice honorable mention for the short, which sort of put the gas back in the tank. But to circle back around, so Fish did a bunch of jobs on a lot of my shorts. He was cinematographer on the High Level Bridge, what he just mentioned. He's been a dancer, he's been a puppeteer, he's been an actor. He's sort of done Odd Job Charlie on a lot of the shorts. And then I made a lot of shorts. I made maybe too many shorts. I made 12 shorts over 17 years. And the whole time I was hitting my head against the brick wall of trying to write a feature. And I just couldn't get my head around the bigger project of the full-length film. And then I said to myself, okay, if I wasn't trying to be so clever, what's like the cliche? What am I trying to avoid? And that's the semi-autobiographical coming-of-age story, right? That's what everyone's supposed to do first. So I very grudgingly wrote out this beat sheet of like, what would the story be? And then I was complaining about it to Fish. And Fish said, well, what if the kid walked in and nobody could tell if they were a boy or girl? Bing! Suddenly it was not just, like a diary entry anymore. Suddenly it was interesting for a movie. I was like, oh, could we never reveal the gender of the protagonist? That's very interesting to me, right? I haven't seen that in a movie before. And then make the movie still hold the audience's attention. So then I was like, do you want to write this with me? And he was like, yeah, sure. And
we were eating steak at Sundance.
Yeah, it was 2015.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that's just and then
such an elite.
So
as we were eating steak at Sundance, the idea occurred to me.
So Trevor basically asked if I wanted to come aboard, and I'm like, hell yeah. And that was it. And
2015. That was 2015.
2015. And it took us a long time, and we kind of wrote another movie in between, and we just have all these scripts flying around. But this is the one that kind of clicked. And
how do you? Well, both of you. So if this is. I don't want to impose the label myself, but if it is semi-autobiographical, as you say, how can you bring a co-writer on? I mean, do you need that outside set of eyes?
Here's the thing. It started off entirely autobiographical. Then Fish got involved and it became semi-autobiographical. Then it became more semi than autobiographical. Now it's fiction. But what I like to say is that it's no longer a true story of what happened, but it is a true story of how it felt.
And there's definitely bits of us in there all over the place. But and in some ways, one of the funny things I've noticed is the real things that happened were wilder than the stuff we could write. Like, you'd write it and it'd be like, man, that's too much. Even though what happened in real life, you'd pull back from just because it didn't.
Like, do you have an example?
Just doesn't feel. Oh, I'm trying to think of one that's not terrible, but
this audience can handle the terrible.
I mean, there are just scenes of bullying and this sort of thing where you just don't take it that far, you know, because you just don't want to turn people into monsters. Whereas, you know, I was both bullied and a bully at different points. So
which is what the movie's about. It's about how does a bullied person suddenly realize that bullying is a good tool to rise in the social standing.
It's a fascinating script. But you do never reveal the gender of Robin. Robin makes a couple comments which are interesting, and you don't know if I don't even want to ask you. I don't want to wreck it. I don't want to bastardize it. You don't know if it's in jest. You don't know if it's a smoke screen of sorts.
Well,
right?
the whole thing is there is no right answer. There's on purpose. There's no right answer.
Yeah.
It's not. If this movie turned into a gender guessing game, where in the lobby people were like, "I got the gender right," like we would have failed. The point is to write a movie where the gender remains open, so that it does slide around. What happens to a movie if the gender's allowed to be fluid? In 1987, when we did not have vocabulary to talk about this,
and there are a couple false flags in there, just the way kids would joke.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like people will joke about this or
but
that.
there's
or
no
whatever.
right answer.
Yeah. It's
not
absolutely
a game show.
No. Yeah.
A lot of slurs and a lot of abrasive language in the film, and at the same time, as one who grew up in Alberta around the same vintage as you, it took me back in a way that was somewhat shocking to realize, I guess in a way, and I'm not saying that as a society we have arrived with our goals of inclusivity, et cetera, but to look back in the 1980s and realize what was normalized regular language.
That's a good example of somewhere we pulled back. We had it written meaner. We had it written much more like it actually was. Some of those slurs that we remember, like they were in the script, and then the producers went, "If we do this, this is what the scene becomes about in 2022. Do you want the scene to be about this, or is that derailing it from what the scene's supposed to be about?" So we actually watered down some of the slurs just so that they didn't completely pull you out of watching the movie.
And tell us about casting Vaughn.
Vaughn's amazing. So Vaughn is this now 17, but at the time we met, I guess Vaughn was 14 or 15. Yeah. Kid, actor, who had been in like some web series, but nothing big. And we did a cross-Canada casting search through our casting director, Jesse Griffiths out of Toronto, who's this great, terrific casting director.
Nailed it.
Who, did a great job on all the kids. But especially, we knew that this movie would sink or swim based on the kid we found to play the lead. And so I was nervous. Like, if we don't find a kid who, A, has a fluid gender, B, has a visually cryptic gender, and C, is a good enough actor to draw an audience in despite all these questions that fly around about gender, like, will the audience actually care about this kid? So as soon as I saw that it was the pandemic, so everyone was sending in self-tapes, and I was just watching them on my laptop during COVID. And boom! All of a sudden, there was Vaughn, and I was like, "Oh, we got Robin, we got one, we got the kid."
Yeah.
And they're just, as you said earlier, they won an acting prize at Locarno, and it's usually a gendered acting prize, best actor or best actress. And this year, when Vaughn won, they changed the award to best acting performance. They took away gender.
See, I thought the word
category.
actor was just being used across the spectrum
It can
now.
be. Actor,
best acting
but to
performance.
be very
Interesting.
clear about
Yes.
the fact that it wasn't a gendered award anymore, they made it best acting performance. Yeah, and going forward, the Locarno Film Festival will no longer have gendered acting categories.
And that's falling apart all over the place. Like, one day it'll happen to the Grammys even.
It happened to the Canadian Screen Awards this year, which is cool.
Yeah,
it's harder in America. There's a lot more money involved in having two categories.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
go ahead.
One of the guiding principles of all of this, even going way back to the beginning, is I've always, and I think you feel it all the time too, like the polarization, the two snakes coming together all the time, like everybody's fighting. Everything's so binary, and I'm always trying to find this kind of, not necessarily the middle ground, but at least a place where contradictory simultaneous truths exist.
Yes.
And so I think that's a guiding principle of the movie in a way, where it's just like when you're watching the film, if you're worried about what Robin is, you can kind of decide and keep watching the film. That's fine.
Yes.
Go for it.
Yeah, or you
But,
could decide that you don't
care.
need to know, and
Yeah.
the movie continues.
Yeah.
Like it's
almost irrelevant. Like I don't
Yeah,
want to say too much about the film, but it's almost irrelevant to how the film plays out. I will say that there's this fascinating dynamic as Robin befriends a bully, and trying to understand the bully, trying to understand what makes the bully tick, makes the processing or the investigation, the understanding of the enlightenment around Robin that much more interesting. There's a lot of layers to this.
Yeah, is it a bullied relationship? Is it a friendship? Is it a romantic attraction? It's blurry. 13 is a blurry age.
Yes. You saying you were a bully and bullied. I was bullied and I was a bully.
Yeah, you get chased and then you find a littler one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just animal behavior.
And then we grow up and spend decades processing it and trying to make it right.
For real. Or write a movie.
Yeah, or write a movie
then
about
get rid of it. I'm fine now.
Then get rid of it.
Yeah, you're the best Mother Teresa over here.
Yeah, we're hanging out with Fish Griwkowsky and Trevor Anderson, and their film is going to debut. By the way, opening night.
Yeah.
That's special.
You know what? It's opening night of the Rainbow Visions Film Festival, our hometown queer film festival, and it's my 50th birthday.
What?
Thursday,
Tomorrow?
Thursday, November 3rd. I used to say first feature by 40. I missed that deadline. And then I started saying first feature by 50, and we got in just under the wire. Thursday, opening night of the Rainbow Vision Film Festival, our movie, my 50th birthday.
You're telling me that you had a goal to have your first feature film out by your 50th birthday, and on your 50th birthday, your film will open the Queer Film Festival in your hometown.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
I feel like I just got chills.
Yeah.
We call that the Underground River. It's just the way things work out, and it's always been that way. Weird coincidences, and it's just we all feel this all the time, deja vu, this kind of thing.
But also there'll be a giant blizzard and no one will come. Like this is how the universe works.
Yeah, for people outside of our neck of the woods, it is absolutely, we're being blasted with snow right now.
Well, thanks
as
for
we
bringing
speak.
the weather. Yeah.
I'm just excited that the two of you showed up today. I was like, this is gnarly outside, but we're glad that you made it out. You know what? In our live chat right now, Tracy's watching on YouTube and says the conversation demonstrates how important networking can be to any career. I mean, you talk about these connections and these happy accidents and the sort of serendipitous paths crossing and things like that. I mean, let me give you an example. Like I was just thinking about this the other night. Johnny, our technical producer, does an amazing job here. And Johnny, this build, I mean, we got the keys to this new studio back in February, and our first show in here was October 3rd, I think.
Yeah.
And so we had the keys for 6 or 7 months, and you get antsy, and you're building it out, and all the stuff goes into it. And we would set a date, not announce it publicly, because you talk to like restaurateurs and other people that would say, don't ever announce your date until you know you're ready to go, right? And we would have a setback, and we would have a delay and a setback, circumstances outside of ours or the contractor's control. And then the day that we're able to do it is the Tuesday after this Thanksgiving long weekend. It's on the heels of the UCP leadership vote, and we have the ability and the interest from Alberta's new premier to be the first guest in studio and to make a bit of a splash. And I just sat there and I thought, it doesn't matter what you think about Danielle Smith, it doesn't matter what you think about me, or quite frankly, it doesn't matter what you think about our new studio. But those delays and all of those things happened to the point where on the calendar it worked out that the first guest on the first show from here was a big one.
Yeah.
And that's like one example of a million. And it's not like, I don't know what they say, like you don't believe in gravity, it's a fact, but something like, I believe in this stuff, that things are supposed to happen, that paths are supposed to cross, that experiences, do you?
I get asked sometimes any advice for young filmmakers, and I always say, don't network, make friends. And there's a big difference. And so my film school was going to film festivals and meeting other filmmakers and staying friends with them, and to the point that I couldn't for years write a feature film, and it was my old friend from university who was the key to unlocking it. So I think it's just a matter of make friends and be part of a community.
Yeah, make friends and make stuff with your friends. That's
Yeah.
the thing. Like all the best sort of collections of anything happening in my life have always been groups of people. Like the University of Alberta Gateway was a place like that, where from which Stephen Notley emerged, and Malcolm Azania and Don Iveson, and just all these people. And then we had a festival called Golden West Music Fest, same thing, for 3 years, and it was just like, you know, it was hard work, and some people don't say this, but it was some of the best fun I ever had.
Yes.
You know, so just if you keep going with your friends, and people even ask quite often, it's like I'll get emails or whatever, hey, can you help me with my script or something, and I'm just like, find somebody else and start pitching it off them. And this is kind of an old rule with movies, like give everybody your elevator pitch all along, but I mean, if someone comes up with a really good idea, ask them if they want to write it with you. So.
I love hearing those stories. I mean, even I don't know if it's maybe it's certainly not exclusively Edmonton, but even the stories of the old the golden era of like SCTV and the old ITV studio with these like young comedians and improv artists that went on to become some of the all-time greats. Working together. What a special environment that is.
One of the greatest things about this city is that we have a piece of public art that is two artists just down the street, and we just walk by, and it's Bob and Doug, right? And I'm just
amazing.
Like, that is so great. Love it.
Absolutely love it.
It's like, there's this weird thing that happens in film where there's this myth of the single solitary creative genius, right? It's not just film. It's like, that's just sort of an art idea, but it's bunk. And the truth is, don't feel like you have to do it alone. And when you're done, don't pretend like you did.
And there's one more thing too, like the way Trevor and I work, like we both sit, he's typing all the time, he drives, I call it. And, we will just kind of shoot ideas back and forth. It's kind of like we're doing improv or something like that. But basically, no matter what, like early on, I'm like, you get a 51% vote. So it gets rid of all this tension. It's just like, okay, so I'll fight for something, for sure, and I'll keep fighting, and he'll change his mind and come back sometimes. But I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, if you give one person the authority, that gets rid of some of that, you know, because someone needs to take responsibility.
Someone needs to have the final call.
Yeah. And it just makes the process move forward. So
in our live chat, they're trying to figure out what fish is short for. It's not short for anything, is it?
Fish-to-fur?
Fish-to-fur. Fish-to-fur. It's your given name. People are guessing Fisher. I don't know. I want to ask, we've got some great questions. If you're tuning in live, obviously, you know our hashtag is Real Talk RJ. You can hit us up in the YouTube chat. This is a special edition of Real Talk. We've been looking forward to this for a long time. We had to wait for this globetrotter to return to Canadian soil so we could welcome Trevor Anderson to studio with Fish Griwkowsky. This conversation is presented by our incredible sponsors, like our friends at Eden Landscaping. They're aware that it's blizzarding outside, but that doesn't mean that they're team is off to Los Rios for the rest of the summer. This is when they start pulling real property reports. It's when their design team starts to draft that blueprint for bringing your outdoor space to life the minute that the ground thaws in spring. Some of this takes time, supply chain issues and the like. You want to get those perfect patio stones? Reach out to Mike and his team today at landscapeedmonton.ca. Hey, we mentioned our hashtag Real Talk RJ. By now, if you're a regular subscriber to Real Talk, you know that that's powered by your friendly local utilities provider. That's Park Power, offering electricity, natural gas, and internet. The best way to save, especially heading into these winter months, it can get more expensive with our utilities use. Bundle the three of them, save on the admin costs, and when you sign up at parkpower.ca, don't forget to use the promo code 2022-RealTalk. It'll knock $70 off your first bill from Park Power. Friesen Brothers knows that great things happen around dinner tables where great food is there. They've, for more than 65 years, been providing exactly that. Still family-owned in 16 Alberta communities. You can learn more about Friesen Brothers meal suggestions, check out their weekly flyer, even check out the careers link. You want to work for a family-owned business that has been known for decades as a great place to be? Check out your new opportunity online today at friesen.com. And I'm sounding the alarm. You are down to 24 hours if you're watching this live, and less if you're catching it later, to get your hands on your ticket to live in life-changing luxury. It's a $2.2 million dream home, the grand prize of the Covenant Foundation Lottery. But it's not just the keys to the house they'll be giving away. They've got Beamers and Alfa Romeos, and they've got a beautiful Lexus. Or, of course, you can take the cash plus luxury vacations and getaways, including a guided fishing adventure. World-class stuff in support of the Misericordia and Grey Nuns Hospitals. Get your ticket today. You're almost out of time. at covenantfoundationlottery.ca. Hanging out with filmmaker Trevor Anderson, his collaborator, co-writer of Before I Change My Mind, Fish Griwkowsky. Let's take another look. I wanted to give you another sneak peek at this film that will, tomorrow night on November 3rd, open the Rainbow Visions Film Festival.
Moving on. Isabella, are you out there? Come on up. All right, as you know, our lead actress also had to drop out at the last second. No more dropping out! So, I got us a new star. Welcome our new Mary Magdalene, Isabella. This is your boyfriend, Jesus.
Not just a director.
That's the arguable.
That's the arguable.
What's it like for you to be in front of the camera?
It's fun. I trained as an actor. I was from the theater first.
You have an improv background, right?
I used to direct Dynasty, the live improvised soap opera.
Yeah.
So it was fun for me to get back to playing a theater director named Trevor Anderson. We have this idea that in all the future features, I should always come back as a different bad director named Trevor Anderson.
We shouldn't overlook the fact that you also make a cameo as the get off my lawn guy.
Yeah, not just that. I mean, and that was really funny because I just got a text. It's like, you have to be the garden
Yard
dad.
dad.
Yard dad. And I'm
Yard
like, I
dad.
don't want to do that. But anyway.
Meanwhile, P.S., we put out the casting call for all of the smaller roles, and I got so many texts from friends. I want Yard Dad. I don't even know what it is. I have to play Yard Dad. That's my life now. And I'm like, no, Fish has to play it. And I'm telling Fish, you're Yard Dad. And he's like, I don't want it. I'm like, you know how many people want Yard Dad?
And then I also play in the there's sort of a musical number, and you can just see me in a cameo. I'm dressed as a Rubik's Cube, which is kind of a wink at the fact that every dumb Netflix show set in the 80s, about 3 minutes in, shows a Rubik's Cube. Like it's just, you'll now that I've said it, you'll see it
Like
always.
Stranger Things or something.
Yeah,
like
Stranger
that.
Things right away. Like
Yeah.
Back to the Future, they're all there. Well, that actually,
So one of my
that actually
rules,
was the 80s.
One of my rules for the designers was no Rubik's Cubes.
Yeah.
And then it was like, except Fish will be dressed as a giant human-sized Rubik's Cube.
Yeah, the editing's phenomenal, and I know that for people listening on a podcast, it'll be annoying to talk too much about the editing if they can't see it, and they'll have to see the film. But there's it kind of, maybe don't take it as a direct parallel. Don't roll your eyes. I'm just a civilian. Okay,
Yeah.
this is an
No, I'm interested.
this is
I'm
an
interested.
uneducated comment. But you know, in The Big Lebowski, when it kind of turns, and he's like meeting with Jackie Treehorn, and then it gets on to this really super trippy, but really great scene of him going down. You know what I'm talking about? The psychedelic kind of 5 minutes of that film that I love. It's usually, I mean, if you know, for those that would enjoy their films with a big handful of mushrooms, that scene is right when they're firing. And you had a lot of fun, obviously, with your team and the talented editors that you worked with and things like that to really take some creative liberties there. And it really makes the film that much more intriguing.
I like that you're basically suggesting people watch this coming-of-age movie on drugs.
Yeah, I mean, I suggest people do everything on drugs, but including watching this. No, but in all seriousness, I just thought that the editing was really captivating. And then there's some kind of like fun underlying themes too. I'm curious if your personal experience or perspective on religion or faith factored into the script at all, including the Jesus Christ Superstar twist.
Well, two things. Let's go to editor first and then Jesus. So Justin, then Jesus. Our editor is Justin Lachance, who I've worked with on my short film since 2008. He lived in Edmonton. He's like Franco Albertan, and his gig was cutting the French evening news.
Wow.
And then he realized, like, I'm cutting the French evening news, and I have this skill set. So and I'm French. So why am I not living in Quebec, where there's a huge French cinema scene, and I'll work as an editor there? So he moved to Montreal, which is why I do all my posts in Quebec, because I'm just following Millwood's boy Justin Lachance, and he's actually become kind of a superstar. He got Emmy nominated for HBO's Big Little Lies.
Wow.
And also Sharp Objects.
Yes.
And he just did Under the Banner of Heaven, that Mormon murder mystery with Andrew Garfield. So he's like actually out of our league now, but I keep telling him, like, hey, we got one. You got to do it. You got to tell the big high paying American TV shows that you got to squeeze in a Canadian indie in the gaps. So we're very lucky that Justin keeps taking our calls, and he's an old friend, and he's an important part of the creative process. But now Jesus. So in the middle, you just saw the scene where it's a community theater production. The joke is that within the movie, they were going to do Jesus Christ Superstar, couldn't get the rights. And so I, quote unquote, my character, writes an original stage musical from Mary Magdalene's point of view called Mary Magdalene Video Star. And it's not so much to put in there for like the religious themes, but more like Mary Magdalene and Jesus. What even are we? Are we boyfriend and girlfriend or what? Like, so that is what we can thematically use to, as a sort of a satire level. Our heroes are undergoing those themes. What is our relationship? Bullied, friends? Is it romantic? What's happening? Meanwhile, the parents have a storyline where that's happening. Are we dating?
Yeah.
Is this a good fit? And then there's the Jesus Mary Magdalene parody level, which allowed us to write a bunch of original songs with Lyle Bell.
Yeah, and I love Jesus Christ Superstar. Trevor doesn't
Jesus
necessarily.
Crepes. Let's open a breakfast store.
And so that's one of my favorite parts of the movie, mostly because when Trevor and I first wrote the lyrics for it, they were kind of placeholder lyrics and they're really dumb. And then a few weeks later, he comes back with the music that he and Lyle have put together, and Lyle's just such a genius at making songs. Like, he's a total hit maker, and it's the dumb lyrics, and I was just laughing my head off. And so that part of the movie, I think, for a lot of people, is where they're real, like, you know, they're gonna like the movie. But
that's the trippy sequence.
This is the part where you're just like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Tracy's wondering on our live chat if this film is something that you think might ultimately be shown in schools.
Yeah. We just won the Student Choice Award in Philadelphia. I was nervous. Like, the true litmus test on a film like this is, like, what do teenagers think?
What do today's youth think?
Yeah. And we showed it to, like, hundreds of public school, high school kids, which is another dicey thing because they were a little older than the kids in the movie. And, you know, at that age, if you're shown something and it's a couple years younger than you, you might feel it's patronizing. So I knew I was kind of walking into the lion's den with this, but it was great. And they all responded great. We did a wonderful Q&A, really great questions, and they were super engaged. And then we won the Student Choice Award at Philadelphia Film Festival. So that to me is okay, we did it. And the kids like it.
And kids are so smart, and I'm not saying they like the movie because they're smart, but I mean, we all know this, though. You encounter them. Just the minds of children are unshackled with the baggage we all have, and and working with the kids on the movie was so much fun, and they were just having such a blast. And we were sometimes worried if they were working long hours or whatever, it would be cold or something like that. But then we re-met them in Calgary when we showed the movie, and this is the stuff they're bragging about. Like, anything that was hard, they're like, yeah, and we were up on the roof, and
we shot for 18 hours.
Exactly, yeah.
Anderson was slamming the table and kicking the tripods. And
yeah, what a monster.
Yeah, we hear a lot about people sort of like identify obviously by what's the word, like generation, right? Like people, we received a letter. People send us emails all the time, which we really appreciate, to talk@ryanjesperson.com. Tell us what you think about this interview. Someone wrote in and opened with as an elder millennial, right? Or people will say like as a boomer or as a Gen Xer or whatever. And I feel like today's youth, is it Gen Z? I think we got Harris hanging out with us. He's doing a job shadow this morning.
Harris,
in the back,
what do you
hanging
think?
out. Harris, what are you, Gen Z? Yeah, Gen Z.
So what's next?
What's next? I don't. Yeah, right. They ran out of. I don't know, but they get a bit of a bad rap. But also, I think get a lot of praise. People say like millennials. Every millennial wants a raise right out of the gates. Every millennial wants to be a VP out of university. And then people will say, but Gen Z has these leadership characteristics where they won't wait for the typical promotion through the corporate ladders. Gen Z makes it happen. Gen Z wants to be the boss. What insight did you get, like working with such a talented cast of young people that maybe you didn't have before?
Well, specificity is your friend in storytelling. And so any kind of generalizations like that go right out the window. And, these are super talented, smart people. And yes, and our age range was 12 to 15 in the main cast. But you just direct them exactly like you direct an adult. You just talk to them and ask them what they think and listen to their answer and work together and make the thing. So if anything, like I go to Q&As and I get older audience members asking like, did you have to explain things to those kids? And it's like, what do you mean? Like bangs? I had to explain bangs to those kids? No, like gender. No, I mean, honestly, we spent more time talking about bangs than gender.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think young people today are probably more enlightened on matters like that or realities like that than us old schoolers anyway.
Well, one of the reasons we set the movie in 1987 was to say, like, this idea of a non-binary gender or gender being like fluid, that's not new. Our language around it, the language we're using today is today's language. Granted, we didn't have really any language around it in 87, but I had the experience. People would say to me, "Are you a boy or a girl?" And I would know in my heart that the answer was complicated and more complicated than I had words for.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew I wasn't going to have the answer in that conversation. I wasn't going to have the answer that year. I didn't get language around this until we started writing this movie, which is kind of why the movie brings up the question and doesn't answer it, because that was my experience. I knew there was a question I didn't have the answer to. I also knew I had to get through my day in grade 8. And so this movie is like, yeah, we're raising a question. We're not answering it in the 90 minutes it takes to watch the movie. And the kids still gotta like survive grade 8.
What would be the mark of aside from earning $250 million and setting yourself up, for the rest of your life with that type of what we would perceive to be success, what would the both of you deem to be a successful wrap to this project? Would it be that it would impact one person? Would it be that people are able to see it from coast to coast and beyond? Like, how do you gauge the success of a It's already successful.
Happened. Yeah.
It's already happened.
It's already happened.
Take us into that.
Like, basically, we'd submitted it to different festivals, and some of the ones that we'd been part of for years with the short films. We love them, but they said no. And so Trevor and I were sort of like, oh, well, okay, cool. Maybe this isn't going to work out. And then Locarno showed up, which is a big one that not a lot of people know about here. Over in Europe, everybody knows about it. But as soon as I saw that Jaguar, I was like, oh yeah, here we are. We've landed.
And to me, like, the other side of that is, yeah, like the kids in Philadelphia are responding to it. You know, that the idea that it's having an impact we'll never know about. People will see this movie, will never know they exist. They'll have an experience with it. That's why, the reason I moved from theater to film, 2 reasons. Like, when you're done with theater, it's over, it's gone. And with film, like, people can still go to my website and see the first short film I ever made. It's still around.
People need to go to your website and watch The Little Deputy.
Sweet, thanks.
That is, what is it? It's like 10 minutes. 9 minutes. And it is masterful. I've honestly probably watched it 10 times. Like, it's just so good.
Hey, this is my chance to plug. I just found out on November 28th, Monday, November 28th, Metro Cinema is going to do an hour of my personal short films. So The Little Deputy, you can see it on the big screen Monday, November 28th, and the tickets and the details will all be at metrocinema.org.
With some of Edmonton's best popcorn.
That's right. That popcorn's good.
Mm-hmm. And beers. They sell beers.
Yeah,
in the theater,
get a beer and watch a short film.
Get a beer and watch a short.
And getting back to what you said, I think those movies you watched when you were a kid. For me, it was Star Wars, but I hope that this is someone's Star Wars. And 20 years from now, I'll hear about it. That's kind of, you know what I mean? Where it's just like, this was the thing that really spoke to them. I don't know why. For me, it was robots and androids and laser swords, but
I'm getting that feeling already that there are non-binary kids that I'm meeting on the road that are coming up to me and saying thank you. Like, here's a movie where I can relate to the hero, but it's not all about their gender.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that was missing.
In closing, I'm so grateful for your time. I know that you like just arrived. You've been here for hours, and you're in our studio.
I'm
and
so happy to be here.
There's a lot for you to do.
You step off the plane.
To have you here.
You feel the moisture fleeing your body, and you know you're home.
Yes, exactly. But everybody wants to talk to you today, and I know you got a lot of stuff going on. We won't keep you too long. And this is a bit of a cliche question, but I know that there are people that by way of our audience, politicos and news hounds and really engaged people that are going to be maybe listening to their first kind of arts-oriented interview in a while.
Good.
And your fan base is going to be maybe discovering this show for the first time. And I think that we're going to have a really neat audience dynamic. And so pardon the cliche question, but I want to ask both of you about your message to today's youth about pursuing dreams. And we talked a bit about collaborating and creating. And Trevor, filmmaking is so different, and the music business is so different. And Fish, I mean, like, even you've had like a big mainstream both you and I did long mainstream media careers. You still have a print career, but boy, has print ever changed over the years? Don't worry, I'm not going to put you in a tough spot unless you want to go there yourself. But like, let me start with you, Fish. Like, what for a young person that would love to be an arts critic for a major newspaper, to have a column.
Right. I mean, I follow whatever you do. Like, I started off by writing in my diary in grade 4. I have this little pink diary with 3 entries in it, and it's like what I watched on TV. And then later on, when I was in grade 11, I went on a trip to Japan and just started writing what was going on, and that's how I started. And so I didn't wait to have the job. I just eventually did the thing, started taking pictures, and then the job just kind of showed up. It sort of formed around me. I never really wanted to be a writer, hilariously. I always wanted to be a photographer more than a writer, and I've done a cartoon since printed since or published since 1989. Tell
people what it is.
Yeah, well, it's called. I may as well come out of the
oh yes.
Well, because I've never necessarily said it, but it's called. I don't even know what it's called. It's called Social Distance Happenings right now, and it's on Gig City.
gigcity.ca.
Yeah, exactly.
Where Real Talk advertises. So we're happy to direct people there.
So, and sorry to Mike Ross that I don't.
Always plugging, Trevor.
ABP.
And I'm busy all the time, so I don't even do it every week. But I've been, it's a continuous line since I was a kid. Trevor and I work very differently, but what I would say is just do the thing. Like, don't hesitate. And in Trevor's case, he waits every year or whatever to let something loose, but I just throw junk out there all the time, and I'm just like, and it's part of what keeps me sane is just to keep and again with the diary too, it's just like I need to write down what's happening. Like, so I'll write about this, I'll write about what Daniel Smith said, I'll write about Trevor and I going for lunch. It's all in there. So there's this thing, and it's like it is hilariously 51 volumes, which is randomly just happens to be my age too. So,
I mentioned your Canon that you've always got this camera. It seems to me you've always got the camera with you, and we've interacted at high points and low points. And you all, you know what I love about the way that you take photos, and you've probably seen this more from Fish than I have, but you're not like stand there, hold it, wait, give me a smile. Like, you're just like bam, and you're like one shot Jack, like you. And I would love to scroll through the images that you capture because they're very, very candid. I would imagine. I've seen a few.
Yeah, I have 80 albums up until about the year 2000, and then more than 1 million photos since then.
Literally more than 1 million?
Yeah, literally for sure. And data management, as any photographer knows, is the worst part of it, and I'm terrible at labeling things. But what I would love, maybe after I die, someone can do this, is just have an art show, whatever length of time it is, all the photos just play in a row, 24 hours. So
that's such a good idea. And this is what I'm going to pick up what you're talking about here, because while you were talking, I was thinking about like Emily Dickinson, who never published a poem in her life, right? She would write them, and I stick them under her bed is my image. I don't know if I got that from somewhere, if that's true. So it's like, do the thing, as Fish was saying. As Herzog says, indulge your obsessions. You don't have to look for the exterior validation. It will come or it won't. We could have all of these lives and think we're these great filmmakers, la, 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 blah, blah, blah. We were on the radio. But then we could die, and maybe it's the photos, the 24-hour photo every second art piece that Fish is remembered for, and he'll be dead and he won't even know it, So if you're trying to like predict the way something's going to land in the world, you're going to just it's a world of grief. But just do the thing, indulge the obsession, follow your heart, make the thing, and that's really truly what matters, especially if you're doing it with friends.
And make the thing that you need to make, that you want to make. Like, don't chase what's cool or trendy, because for sure this movie kind of landed at a good time, I think, in the conversation widely, but we were a little early, I think, in some way.
You see a million short films. Right after Reservoir Dogs came out, every short film looked like Reservoir Dogs. Do you know what I mean? It's like, if you start from your gut, you're going to make something authentic to you, and it's going to be different from everything else.
I love it. I love that you referenced Werner Herzog. I just watched Grizzly Man again the other day. His storytelling is, I love how he narrates. Like, there's been this trend in voiceover acting, as if I need to tell you guys, but like just like a more chill, very sort of a conversation. He's very listenable, and his storytelling, the way that he allows shots to breathe and stuff like that. I mean, I just think he's a master. I love that you cited him there.
Yeah, I was lucky. I got to go to his Rogue Film School and like study under him a little bit, and that's incredible.
Do that voiceover. Tell that story.
I don't. Oh yeah, he said he had seen The High Level Bridge, this short film I made called The High Level Bridge, and I met him, and he's holding a Heineken and a clipboard. Hello, and he says, "Oh yes, I saw The High Level Bridge," very accomplished filmmaking. And so that's the quote that's on my website. Very accomplished filmmaking, Werner Herzog. What he went on to say, which is not on my website, is like, but it has one important flaw. And I'm like, oh. And he's pointing right at my heart. It's like Werner Herzog's pointing at my heart and saying, flaw. Yeah, one important flaw. What's that? The voiceover. It should be more deadpan. And I said, I'm like, okay, take the note. Don't contradict Werner Herzog. And I think, okay, well, that's interesting. People tell me it's deadpan. He's like, no, I know what I'm talking about. I was on The Simpsons. That's how he wins an argument. He doesn't win an argument with I'm Werner Herzog. He wins it with like I was on The Simpsons. Yeah. And I think his point was it's funnier the more deadpan you are. Yeah. But, you know, I mean, and I think it's a pretty dry and deadpan voiceover, but he can hear that it's not dry enough. Drier. It needs to be drier. So, yeah, too much. I can hear the irony. I guess I have too much irony for Werner Herzog. But he's a great teacher. He's got this grandfatherly energy where it's like he really, through his, you know, German distance, he cares about all the young filmmakers and wants to help. So yeah, he's a great.
You are already that person to someone.
I'm someone's Herzog.
Cool. You're my Herzog.
I'm your Herzog.
Hey, if you take anything from today, be someone's Herzog.
Keeping it real since 2020. The Ryan Jesperson Real Talk. Right.
And you can keep the mugs. Thanks. That's filmmaker Trevor Anderson. You can check out his incredible work at TrevorAndersonFilms.com, and Fish Griwkowsky, a dear friend of mine. And I never know where our conversations are going. We kept this one pretty on the rails, considering
we did.
Where we sometimes
considering the world is on fire because my people are starting World War III, we did definitely.
Yes, like I didn't even ask you. I've got some emails pulled from people that have nothing to do with the film.
Do you want to talk about World War III? I've got nowhere to be.
We've got nowhere to. I was thinking, like, if you know, quite frankly, you two, if this interview sucked, I was just going to drag you into the muck and mire of, you know, for example, Kevin wrote in to say, I think that there are thousands of possible Halloween costume ideas. I'm not a Christian, but I do wonder why people seem to think it's okay to dress up in parodies of religious leaders. Why do we have to use it as an attack on a group? Why be a jerk to those who believe? And I was going to drag you into a conversation on Halloween costumes.
He's not going to like our movie.
No, I don't think so. Hey, the two of you, I'm so thrilled to see the success of this film. It's so well deserved. Trevor, you're a household name for anyone in Western Canada and across the country that is big into indie films and the art of storytelling. But this, your first feature, I'm still getting chills thinking about the fact that it's opening the Rainbow Visions Festival on your 50th birthday. So unbelievably
cool. Come watch me
cool.
drop dead on stage.
Yeah. Well, don't say shit like that, because what if it happens? Knock on the white oak
I don't know. If it
of
happens,
this
it just
custom
gets
table
funnier,
constructed by our friends at Urban Timber. You see how
nice
well
job.
done.
All right.
Hey, can I do one shout out?
Of course you can do 100.
There's a huge fan of yours named Chris who works at Save On Foods downtown, and he always asks me, when are you going to be on Jesperson?
Oh,
and
amazing.
I'm like, one of these days. Anyway, hi, Chris.
Amazing. Hi, Chris, and thank you so much for your support of the show. That's Fish Griwkowsky, of course, and you can find him on Instagram and Twitter at Fisheye Photo with all F's.
Yeah, good.
Fisheye Photo. Tomorrow night, November 3rd. Is it sold out? People can check out Rainbow Visions
People should
Film
get their
Festival.
tickets in advance if they want to come, because it's going to sell out. But
of course it is.
I think there's still some tickets right now if you go to metrocinema.org.
Or even rainbowvisions.ca. I'm looking at it right now. Yeah. It looks to me like, still a couple tickets available for Before I Change My Mind, directed by Trevor Anderson and co-written by Fish Griwkowsky. A real treat to have you both in studio. Much love, Ryan. And mad respect.
Thanks, Ryan.
Okay. Now get the hell out of here.
Right, okay, bye.
All right, you two. Coming up on tomorrow's edition of The Best of Real Talk, as we wrap up our week, they're stirring it up, each in their own way. The cowboy hat wearing Quick Dick McDick and country music singer Brett Kissel.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson. Executive producer Josh Dunford. Technical producer John Hicks. General manager Katie Cook-Chivers. Account coordinator Lawrence Derlego. Human resources Lena Shepard. Website design Mike Johnston. Voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Duvedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harmon Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.